Mental exhaustion doesn't appear overnight. It builds quietly, layer by layer. Constant stress, endless decisions, and relentless pressure slowly drain energy, leaving focus, creativity, and motivation in short supply. This isn't just tiredness. It's a psychological state where the brain struggles to function optimally. Understanding the mechanisms behind burnout reveals why it happens, how it affects thinking, and what it takes to recover before the mind reaches its breaking point. Today, we will talk about the psychology of mental burnout. So before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. 1. Mental burnout. Mental burnout is more than just feeling tired. It is a state of chronic cognitive, emotional, and physical exhaustion caused by prolonged stress and overexertion. Unlike temporary fatigue, burnout impairs decision-making, focus, and motivation. The brain's stress response system, particularly the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis, becomes overactive under constant demands, releasing cortisol and other stress hormones. Over time, this sustained activation disrupts neural functioning, reduces dopamine signaling, and diminishes the capacity for pleasure, motivation, and cognitive flexibility. Individuals often feel overwhelmed, detached, or emotionally numb, even when completing tasks they once enjoyed. Understanding the psychological and neurobiological mechanisms behind burnout reframes it as a predictable response to sustained stress, not a personal weakness. Awareness allows for early intervention, helping to restore balance, cognitive efficiency, and emotional resilience before exhaustion becomes severe or chronic. 2. Cognitive overload and its effects. A key driver of mental burnout is cognitive overload. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and self-control, becomes overtaxed when faced with constant demands. Multitasking, continuous problem-solving, and decision fatigue deplete cognitive resources, making even simple tasks feel insurmountable. Mental clutter impairs memory, focus, and creative thinking, reinforcing the feeling of being overwhelmed. Cognitive overload often triggers a feedback loop. The more one struggles to manage tasks, the greater the stress, which in turn further diminishes mental capacity. Recognizing cognitive overload as a central component of burnout highlights the importance of managing mental load, prioritizing tasks, and implementing deliberate recovery periods to restore brain efficiency and clarity. 3. Emotional exhaustion and its role. Emotional exhaustion is a hallmark of mental burnout. Chronic stress, interpersonal conflict, and high-demand environments drain emotional reserves, leading to irritability, apathy, and detachment. Overactive amygdala responses heighten sensitivity to perceived threats, while diminished prefrontal regulation impairs emotional control. As emotional capacity declines, individuals may struggle with empathy, patience, or social connection, amplifying feelings of isolation. Emotional exhaustion reinforces cognitive fatigue, creating a synergistic decline in mental performance. Understanding this interaction underscores the need for emotional recovery strategies, such as mindfulness, reflection, and social support, to restore both emotional resilience and cognitive functioning during periods of sustained stress. 4. The motivation decline. Mental burnout often manifests as a pronounced loss of motivation. Dopamine pathways, critical for reward anticipation and goal-directed behavior, are disrupted under chronic stress and cognitive overload. Tasks that once felt meaningful or stimulating now appear burdensome or unrewarding. Motivation decline is not laziness. It is the brain signaling depleted energy and overstimulation. This neurobiological feedback encourages rest and recovery, but in high-demand environments, individuals often ignore these signals, worsening burnout. Recognizing motivation loss as a biological warning system helps individuals approach recovery strategically, prioritizing restorative practices to restore energy and engagement. 5. Behavioral symptoms of burnout. Burnout manifests behaviorally through procrastination, decreased productivity, irritability, and withdrawal from social or professional obligations. Individuals may experience impaired decision-making, poor time management, and reduced creativity. Sleep disturbances, appetite changes, and physical fatigue are common, as the body and brain attempt to cope with sustained stress. Behavioral symptoms often create a feedback loop. Reduced performance triggers self-criticism and anxiety, which intensifies mental strain. Recognizing these patterns allows for targeted interventions, such as task prioritization, boundary setting, and behavioral restructuring to interrupt destructive cycles and promote recovery. 6. Environmental triggers. Burnout is often exacerbated by external pressures, including high workloads, constant connectivity, and unsupportive environments. Digital distractions, incessant notifications, and societal expectations of productivity heighten cognitive load and prevent mental restoration. Work culture that glorifies overachievement and multitasking further reinforces burnout. Environmental triggers create chronic stress, keeping the brain in a heightened state of alertness. Modifying the environment, reducing distractions, setting boundaries, and creating spaces for focus and recovery supports cognitive and emotional resilience, mitigating burnout's impact. 7. Sleep and recovery. Sleep is critical in preventing and recovering from burnout. Chronic sleep deprivation impairs prefrontal cortex function, reduces emotional regulation, and disrupts dopamine and cortisol balance. Without adequate restorative sleep, cognitive efficiency, memory, and attention decline, making stress feel overwhelming and reinforcing burnout. Prioritizing consistent sleep schedules, quality rest, and short recovery periods throughout the day supports brain function and emotional resilience, breaking the cycle of exhaustion. Sleep acts as a foundation for recovery, allowing both cognitive and emotional processes to restore equilibrium. 8. Coping mechanisms and self-awareness. Effective coping requires self-awareness and intentional strategies. Mindfulness, meditation, journaling, and structured breaks help reduce cognitive overload and emotional strain. Recognizing early signs of burnout, irritability, fatigue, reduced motivation, and emotional detachment enables proactive intervention. Adaptive coping strategies, such as delegation, workload management, and seeking social support, reduce chronic stress exposure and protect cognitive and emotional resources. Self-awareness empowers individuals to align demands with capacity, preventing prolonged mental exhaustion. 9. Rebuilding mental energy. Recovery from burnout involves deliberate restoration of mental energy. Techniques include reducing multitasking, prioritizing tasks, practicing restorative activities, engaging in physical exercise, and pursuing creative or enjoyable hobbies. Controlled exposure to stimulating activities gradually rebuilds dopamine function, motivation, and cognitive clarity. Reconnecting with meaningful goals restores purpose, while restructuring daily routines reduces cognitive strain. Recovery is an active process, requiring consistent attention to both cognitive and emotional needs, ultimately restoring productivity, focus, and emotional stability. 10. Long-term prevention strategies. Preventing mental burnout requires sustainable habits. Setting boundaries, maintaining work-life balance, practicing mindfulness, and scheduling regular downtime protect cognitive and emotional resources. Cultivating supportive social connections and prioritizing meaningful activities enhances resilience. Understanding the brain science behind stress, motivation, and cognitive load empowers individuals to structure environments, routines, and habits to reduce the likelihood of burnout. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up, leave a comment, and click the button to subscribe.